My name's Sion Wyn. I'm from North Wales, UK, and I specialise in computerized system compliance, validation, and associated topics like data integrity, electronic records and signatures, Part 11 regulation, Annex 11 regulation. It's trying to move away from a compliance-based approach towards a quality-based approach. And they're encouraging the use of automation and tools, and they're trying to avoid creating unnecessary barriers to the adoption of new technology and tools. Computerized system validation was perceived by many companies to be a barrier to innovation. So the FDA wanted to play their part in explaining to the industry that, listen, we're not the people holding you back here, but we would rather that you focus truly on the quality of the product. CSA is a reminder really of the true objectives of any validation and compliance activity associated with a computerized system. Is it's got to be fit for intended use. Secondly, it's got to be compliant. And the third one is that we've managed any residual risk to the patient and to the quality of the medicinal product through our processes. There's been a tradition that's got enshrined over quite a few decades now of needing to create an extra layer of paperwork aimed at the inspector. It's aimed at the auditor. We should do work, we should create information, we could generate records because it's useful to the organisation, not because it might be of interest to some third party inspector or auditor. It's about making that system work properly. And if we can move from the generation of a paper document towards an electronic workflow, whatever process, which is better and more effective, and jettison unnecessary paper, we should do that. Application of IQ, OQ, and PQ to computerized systems began about 30-something years ago, when basically the industry really didn't have a good approach towards validating computerized systems. So the industry was looking around for frameworks that might work, and they saw process validation and its stages of DQ, IQ, OQ, PQ, etc., and said, well, if it works for process validation, let's try it for computerized systems. It is singularly ineffective for large-scale software development, and it's not effective for the majority of medium to large IT systems, where the life cycle does not conform to IQ, OQ, PQ, and neither does it naturally check out those deliverables. Unfortunately, often auditors, perhaps even inspectors, may not have the technical background to know what they're really looking for. And they only know that 20 years ago, when they were looking, they saw a lot of IQs, OQs, and PQs. They say, we want to see your OQ. Then it's a matter of communicating, well, actually, this is what our life cycle looks like now, and what you might have thought of as an OQ in the past is now going to be mainly realized by the product developers, functional testing of the product, and to a certain extent met by the checking of the configuration during the implementation or whatever. And especially now that most software in the world is produced using agile processes, the terminology's changed again. So it's all burn down charts and backlogs and various kinds of ceremonies. So nowhere in the real life software development world is IQ, OQ, PQ even considered. don't primarily think compliance, think quality. Don't try and think, well, what would the FDA like? Think, what would safeguard the patient and safeguard efficient delivery of drugs? If you do that, then you will keep us happy, as opposed to thinking, well, the FDA wants us to produce all these documents and then they'll give us an easy ride in inspection. So the message from the regulators themselves, very clear and very positive. The Enabling Innovation Guidance is a good practice guide that sits alongside the main GAMP 5 guide, and it covers 3 main areas. One is the use of agile approaches to software development. It's just underlining that this is the way software is developed these days. The second topic it covers is IT service management and service provider management, because more and more effort and activity is being delegated, dispersed from the regulated company to service providers. And the third one is adoption of critical thinking to support the objectives of CSA and the case for quality. Increasingly, the day-to-day responsibility for the processes, such as software development, testing of software, the operation of systems, and that whole IT QMS area of incident management, problem management at the technical level, etc., that is being handed over to the service provider and managed and controlled through appropriate agreements, contracts, SLAs, etc. And, very importantly, through a defined and agreed communication process. Yes, I think very much. And the things I liked were the great use of tools and automation, and the shift away from unnecessary documentation. So the selecting of best-in-class tools and using them according to a well-defined software development process and a well-defined product development process. I thought that was very good. It had all the elements of a modern software development quality system, and those are the elements that it should have. And the processes seem to be very well defined and described in a way that, I as an external person could understand them. So then I had faith that the internal person could understand them and follow them as well. Taking product knowledge, process knowledge, regulatory knowledge, because there'll be basic regulatory things that they've got to achieve, and lastly, their own company quality standards. So taking all those inputs, they need to be able to define the requirements for that system. Where the regulated company needs to be able to apply critical thinking is to be able to assess suppliers and their products, to assess the suppliers and say, have they got the right quality system in place? Are they using the right tools? And is following ITIL or similar IT quality system type framework to manage operation and service delivery? That's the kind of critical thinking questions that the regulated company have to apply. We've been looking at the GAMP 5 guide regularly over many years, and it was obvious that the main concepts, the key concepts, like the need for process and product understanding, the need for a quality system, the need for a defined life cycle, leveraging supplier involvement, quality risk management, they're all absolutely correct and up to date and relevant. However, we saw that technology had moved on, processes had moved on, and there were some new topics that weren't really covered in the GAMP 5 first edition. Throughout the document, we've taken the opportunity to say, and critical thinking needs to be applied here to make these types of decisions, and here to make these types of decisions. And we've taken the opportunity to bring in some of the thoughts and the principles from CSA and the case for quality as well. The appendix on electronic production records has been updated to reflect cloud technology, blockchain, or distributed ledger systems in general, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And there's a whole new appendix on the use of agile. So a kind of refinement and the strengthening of some of the key themes, update in line with current technology, and new things that needed to be covered. The same messages that Dr. Woodcock's been saying for years and commissioners have been saying for years, and now we're seeing these active programs talking about improving product quality rather than just safeguarding product quality, and talking about protecting the patient more than anything. Protecting the patient in terms of product quality and also product availability. So organizational maturity can help with supply chain disruption, can help with drug shortages as well. Get the right SMEs who understand the processes and the products to design the process, and almost automatically, if it's a good process, it will meet regulatory requirements. Don't try and design, let's say, a processes to manage computerized systems by looking at the regulations. That's not and kind of trying to reverse engineer a good process from a series of pretty erratic and random do's and don'ts. That's not going to work. I think it helps in many ways. It helps with standardization of approaches. It helps information sharing, breaking down the silos. It helps trending. I think that, and it helps with proactive risk management rather than reactive firefighting. So I honestly believe that the important thing with these types of systems is the content and what you can do with that content, and obviously how effective the people are at using that, which means that usability is a massive thing. Fred Brooks, he wrote a fantastic book called The Mythical Man Month, which is it's like legendary in the software industry. There was an anniversary edition of his book that was published, where he went back and looked on some of his ideas on software engineering and what he learned. It was obvious to him that the one problem in the original book was that it assumed a waterfall process, and then he said, and he explained why effective software development needs to be iterative, incremental. You've got to use more tools, but even more important than anything is you've got to have the right people. The quality of the people in the team are more important than any tool or process factor. What I find really funny is that anniversary edition of his book was published in 1995, right, which is when the first final GAMP 1 basically was published. So I think it's about time we really listen to Fred Brooks and what he said in 1995